I kept checking the time on my phone as I sat at the small restaurant where Lisa and I had our first date. I kept telling myself she would walk in any minute, smiling the way she used to. I had booked the table weeks ago because I wanted our 5th anniversary to feel special. The place smelled like warm bread and old memories, and for a moment, I let myself believe everything was fine. I ordered water, tried to calm my nerves, and waited for her text, hoping she would say she was on her way soon. Instead, my phone buzzed with a short message that made my stomach twist. Caught up at work. Might be late. That was all she wrote. I stared at the words, wishing there was more, wishing she sounded sorry or even a little bothered. I whispered, "It's fine," even though no one was listening. A waiter walked by and asked if I wanted to order, but I told him I'd wait. I tried calling Lisa, but it went straight to voicemail. Her voice in the greeting sounded warmer than the one she used with me lately. I sat there another hour, pretending everything was normal, until my phone vibrated again. I thought it was Lisa at first, but it wasn't. It was a social media alert. I opened it without thinking. The selfie hit me like a punch. Lisa was smiling wide, dressed in a black dress she had never worn for me. Marcus Hale stood beside her, leaning in close, his hands slightly behind her waist. They looked like a couple celebrating something special. The caption read, "Best night with the best team." My throat tightened, and I whispered, "You said you were working?" I stared at the screen so long my eyes burned. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the picture made it impossible not to. I whispered, "Why would you lie to me, Lisa?" A couple at the next table laughed loudly, and the sound made me feel even more alone. I pushed my chair back and walked outside to breathe. The cold air stung my face. I called her again. Still no answer. I sent a text asking if she was okay. Nothing. I felt like a ghost standing on the sidewalk, watching my life move without me. When I went back inside, the waiter gave me a gentle smile and asked, "Would you like to order now?" I shook my head and said, "No, I'm leaving." My voice cracked a little. I paid for the water and walked out again, holding my phone like it weighed 100 pounds. I called Ben on my way to the car. He picked up fast. "Hey, did the dinner happen?" he asked. I took a deep breath and said, "She didn't come." He cursed under his breath and said, "Tell me what happened." I didn't even know where to start. "Send me the picture," Ben said, and I did. He went quiet for a long moment. "Man, I'm so sorry." I rubbed my forehead and said, "I don't know what to think. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a work thing." He replied, "Ethan, people don't dress like that for work." I hated that he was right. I leaned against my car and whispered, "Why would she do this on our anniversary?" He didn't have an answer. "Do you want to come over?" he asked. I said no, but part of me wished he would ignore me and show up anyway. On the drive home, I kept replaying the picture in my head, trying to find some angle that made it innocent, but every detail felt wrong. When I walked into the house, the lights were off, and the silence felt heavier than usual. I sat on the couch and whispered, "Happy anniversary," even though no one could hear me. I typed a message to Lisa asking when she would be home, but I didn't send it. Instead, I put my phone face down and tried to breathe. I told myself I would talk to her tomorrow, but deep down I already knew something had changed that night. I woke up feeling like someone had poured sand into my chest. I rubbed my face and whispered, "Great, I look dead." Then my phone buzzed again and again. I groaned and picked it up. Messages kept popping up from coworkers. "Hey, are you okay? Did you see the photos? Man, that sucks." I stared at the screen and said, "Fantastic." Everyone saw it before I even had breakfast. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried not to throw my phone at the wall. When I finally walked into the kitchen, Lisa was already there, eating cereal like nothing happened. She looked up and said, "Morning." I swallowed hard and said, "Morning. Want to talk about last night?" She blinked slowly and asked, "What about it?" I laughed a little because I couldn't believe she was serious. "You didn't show up. You told me you were working. Then you posted selfies." She rolled her eyes and said, "It was a team celebration. Why are you making it a big deal?" I pressed my palms to the counter. "Because it was our anniversary." She sighed. "You're overreacting." I almost said something worse, but I stopped. I muttered, "I'm not imagining things." She scoffed and grabbed her bag. "I don't have time for this. I'll be home late." Then she walked out, leaving me in silence. I whispered, "Of course you will." At work, Grace noticed me the moment I walked in. She stepped closer and asked, "Ethan, are you okay? You look pale." I tried to smile. "Rough night." She lowered her voice. "I saw the pictures. I'm really sorry." I shook my head and said, "It's fine. I'll figure it out." She frowned and whispered, "You don't deserve that." Her words hit harder than I expected. I cleared my throat and said, "Thanks, Grace." "Really?" Around lunch, Mia called. The moment I answered, she said, "Ethan, tell me you're not still defending her." I sighed and replied, "I don't know what I'm doing." She said, "I saw her with Marcus 2 weeks ago at the mall. They were standing too close." I didn't say anything then because I hoped I was wrong. My heart thumped in my chest. "You're sure it was him?" She said, "Positive." "I'm sorry." I leaned back in my chair and whispered, "I need to stop pretending everything is normal." She said, "Ben and I are here if you need anything." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thanks." When I got home that night, Lisa was in the living room, laughing loudly into her phone. I paused in the hallway when I heard her say, "Marcus, stop. You're ridiculous." My hands trembled. I whispered, "You said it was just work." She kept laughing, not knowing I was listening. I walked into the room and said, "Who are you talking to?" She jumped and turned away, lowering her phone. "Just a coworker." I stepped closer. "Marcus." She snapped, "Why are you spying on me?" I said, "I'm just asking." She shooed me away with her hand. "Stop being dramatic." She walked past me without another word. I stood there staring at the dark hallway, feeling heat rise in my chest. I muttered, "I'm not crazy. Something is happening." I sank onto the couch and covered my face with my hands. The house felt too quiet, too heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. I whispered, "If she won't tell me the truth, I'll find it myself." I sat there for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. Every sound in the house felt sharp and too loud. I kept replaying her laugh in my head, the one she saved for someone else. I whispered, "When did I stop mattering to you?" My phone buzzed again. It was Ben saying, "Call if you need to talk." I typed a reply, but deleted it. I walked to the window and stared at the streetlights glowing over the empty road. I said quietly, "If this is the truth, I need to face it." I felt the night watching me. I knew things were getting worse when Lisa started coming home long after midnight. And every time I asked where she had been, she brushed me off like I was a stranger standing in her hallway. I said, "We don't talk anymore." And she just muttered that she was tired, grabbed her phone, and walked away before I could ask another question. It scared me how easily she shut me out. When I told Ben about it, he said, "Man, you need to pay attention because something isn't right." His warning stayed with me all night. I couldn't ignore it. Lisa kept changing her passwords, and every time her screen lit up, she flipped her phone over like she was hiding a crime. I asked her, "Why are you being so secretive?" And she snapped, "Stop watching me." I said I wasn't watching her, just worried, but she rolled her eyes and told me to grow up. It felt like every word between us turned into an argument she had already prepared to win. When I told her, "I miss when we actually talked," she laughed like it was a joke only she understood. I felt completely invisible. That hurt. One night, I said, "Lisa, we need to talk," and she instantly rolled her shoulders like she was tired of hearing my voice. She said, "You're being insecure," and the word hit harder than she knew because I had always tried to be patient with her. I told her, "I'm not insecure. I'm confused," but she threw her hands up and shouted that I was controlling her. I stared at her and said, "All I'm asking is honesty," and she stormed into the bedroom like I was the enemy. I stood there wondering what she was hiding. I felt lost. Ben asked me over the phone, "Do you have any proof she's lying?" And I told him I didn't want proof. I wanted her to tell me the truth. He said, "Look around you, man." And I hated how right he sounded. Every time I stepped outside, I saw Marcus's white car parked too close to my street, like he wanted to be seen. I asked Lisa about it, and she said, "You're imagining things," without even checking the window. She walked away before I could say anything else, leaving me wondering if she cared at all anymore. I stayed. Then she started wearing new clothes I had never seen, and when I asked where they came from, she said, "Sales," without meeting my eyes. I said, "You didn't tell me you went shopping," and she replied, "I don't need permission." I felt something crack inside me, because she never talked like that before. I told her, "I'm not your enemy," and she walked past me as if she didn't hear a word. That night, Lauren texted me, asking, "Are you holding up?" And the message hit me like a warning I wasn't prepared for. I felt exposed. I froze. I stared at Lauren's message and whispered, "She knows something," because there was no other reason she would reach out like that. I texted back, "Why are you asking?" But she didn't answer. I tried calling Ben again and said, "I think everyone knows more than I do," and he told me to calm down and breathe. I told him, "I need the truth," and he said, "Then stop asking her and start looking." His words scared me, but they also pushed me forward because I finally admitted to myself that something was terribly wrong. I had to act. Now, that night, I sat alone in the living room and said out loud, "I'm done pretending," because the silence felt like it was choking me. I stood up, paced the floor, and told myself, tomorrow I start looking for answers. I felt a mix of fear and anger swirling inside me, pushing me toward a decision I could no longer avoid. I whispered, "Whatever she's hiding, I'll find it," and the words felt heavier than anything I'd said before. I turned off the lights and stood in the doorway, knowing this was the night everything in my life finally shifted. I sat in my car telling myself, "Don't do this," but my hands were already shaking on the steering wheel. When Lisa said, "I'm working late again," something inside me snapped. I whispered, "If you're telling the truth, I'll feel like an idiot. If you're lying," I didn't finish the sentence. I followed her car from a distance, trying to breathe. Every turn she took made my chest feel tighter. When she pulled into the hotel parking lot, I said, "Please, tell me you're here for a meeting." My voice cracked. She walked inside wearing a smile I hadn't seen in months. I whispered, No, please don't." I followed on foot and stopped outside the hotel bar. I hid behind a column and peeked in. My stomach twisted. She wasn't alone. Marcus was already there, leaning close to her. She touched his arm like it was natural. They both laughed. I mouthed, "How long has this been going on?" I raised my phone with trembling fingers. I said, "Just one picture." "No, a few." I took several shots, each one worse than the last. Lisa brushed something off Marcus's shirt and said, "You're ridiculous," in the playful tone she hadn't used with me in forever. He lifted her hand and said, "You missed a spot." When she didn't pull away, I felt something break inside me. I whispered, "I can't watch this," but I couldn't move. Then Marcus leaned in, talking low, and she tilted her head toward him like she wanted to hear everything he had to say. I muttered, "That's not work. That's not innocent." My fingers were cold, and I couldn't stop shaking. They clinked glasses, smiling like two people celebrating something personal, something secret. My throat burned. When he placed his hand on her back and guided her to the bar counter, I finally stepped back. "Enough," I said under my breath. "I have what I need." I walked out fast, barely seeing where I was going. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. In the parking lot, I leaned against my car and whispered, "Why, Lisa? Why him?" I felt lightheaded, like the ground wasn't steady. On the drive home, I kept replaying the moment Lisa touched his arm. I whispered she made her choice. My eyes blurred, and I had to pull over once to calm down. I said, "Get it together," but my voice cracked. When I finally reached home, I sat in the driveway for several minutes, staring at the front door. When I walked inside, Lisa arrived only minutes later. She put on a sweet smile and said, "Hey, you're still up?" I just stared at her. She tilted her head. "What's wrong?" Her voice sounded gentle, but all I could hear was her laugh at the bar. I asked, "How was work?" She stretched her arms and said, "Busy. I'm exhausted." The lie made my stomach twist. I said, "Really? Nothing interesting happened tonight." She blinked. "Why are you asking like that?" I stepped aside so she could pass, because I was scared I'd scream if I didn't. She brushed past me and said, "I'm going to shower. We can talk tomorrow." I whispered, "No, we can't." As soon as she closed the door, I called Ben. He answered on the first ring. "You okay?" he asked. I said no. I followed her. I saw everything. My voice shook. Ben cursed and asked, "Are you safe? Are you alone?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I got pictures," I said. "I didn't want proof, Ben. I didn't want any of this." He said, "Listen to me. You need to protect yourself now. Stop thinking with your heart." I sank onto the couch and whispered. She looked happy with him. Ben said, "Then it's time to think about what's next." I didn't answer. I just listened to my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I barely slept. When morning came, I stared at the ceiling and muttered, I can't go into work today. I took a personal day and tried to calm down. Late in the afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Oliver from HR. I answered, and he said, Ethan, I need to discuss a private matter with you. It concerns rumors about workplace misconduct. My pulse spiked. I asked, why me? He replied, your name came up in connection to someone else. I believe you may know something. I felt the blood drain from my face. I whispered, is this about Marcus? Oliver paused before saying, we should talk in person. When the call ended, I stared at my phone and said, what did she get dragged into? Something bigger was happening, and Lisa was right in the middle of it. Oliver asked me to meet him in a small conference room, and the moment I walked in, he said, close the door. I did, and he lowered his voice. Ethan, I need you to be honest with me. I said, about what? He tapped a folder and said, there are complaints about Marcus. Inappropriate comments. Suspicious promotions. People say he's been using certain employees for leverage. My stomach twisted. I whispered, Lisa. He nodded slightly. Her name appears more than once. I rubbed my face and said, so he wasn't just flirting. He was using her for his own gain. Oliver sighed and said, I can't tell you everything, but I need you to understand how serious this is. I leaned forward and asked, is she in trouble? He nodded. If the investigation continues, yes. Some people think she helped him get certain positions approved. I shook my head and said, she wouldn't do that. He answered, maybe not on purpose. I felt heat rise in my chest. He used her, I said again. Oliver replied, you deserve to know. I stood and whispered, I don't even know who I'm going home to anymore, and that scares me deeply tonight. When I got home, Lisa was sitting on the couch like nothing was wrong. She smiled and said, you're early. I stared at her and replied, we need to talk. She sighed. Again, I held up my phone and said, I met with HR today. Marcus is under investigation. Her eyes widened. Why would you tell me that? I said, because your name is in the complaints. She stood and shouted, this is your fault. You support me. I yelled back. I tried. I begged you to talk to me. She shook her head and said, you stopped enough today. I walked away from her and said, I can't believe you're blaming me. She followed me into the hallway and snapped, you always make everything about your feelings. I turned and said, my feelings? You were with Marcus at a hotel. She froze. You followed me? I said, I needed the truth. She covered her face and whispered, I messed up. I replied, then say it. She dropped her hands and shouted, fine. I made a mistake, but you pushed me there. I whispered, no, Lisa. You left before I followed. She grabbed a suitcase and said, I'm leaving tonight. I said, so you're running to him. She didn't answer, just zipped the suitcase harder. I stepped back and said, go then. She brushed past me and muttered, you never understood me. I replied, I tried every day. She walked out the door without looking back. I stood there shaking until my brother Nathan walked in after I called him earlier. He asked what happened. I said, she left with him. Nathan put a hand on my shoulder and said, you're not alone. I whispered, it feels like I am. He answered, not tonight. I need you here now, please. After Nathan helped me sit down, he said, you have to breathe. I nodded and whispered. Everything fell apart fast. He replied, you'll get through this. I shook my head. I don't know how. He said, 1 hour at a time. I leaned back and muttered, she chose him over everything we built. Nathan said, that's on her, not you. I rubbed my eyes and said, I feel stupid. He answered, you trusted someone you loved. That's not stupid. I whispered, I can't believe this is my life. He said, it won't stay like this. You will rise again soon. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet house and stared at my phone. A new message lit up the screen from an unknown number. It read, you don't know me, but I know what he's done. I typed back, who is this? The reply came fast. Julia, Marcus's ex-wife. I froze and whispered, why are you texting me? She wrote, because I know exactly what you're going through. I swallowed and asked, did he do this before? She answered, more than once. I leaned forward and typed, tell me everything. She replied, tomorrow. We will talk then clearly. I met Julia at a small cafe, and the first thing she said was, "You don't know me, but I know him." I nodded, unsure if I wanted to hear it. "You know Marcus?" I whispered. She leaned in and said, "More than you think. He does this to women like us. Vulnerable, trusting, perfect targets." My hand shook. "Lisa?" I asked. She gave a faint nod. "She's just the newest. You need to see the pattern." I swallowed hard. "Show me." Julia pulled out her tablet. Screenshots, emails, past complaints. "Look at this one." I read the messages and my stomach twisted. He promised her promotions, favors, anything she wanted, right? I muttered. She nodded. "He thrives on control. The women think they're choosing him, but it's all his plan." I whispered, "So it wasn't love. It was power." She said, "Exactly. He's never sincere." I looked at the pictures of Lisa and Marcus smiling, arm around arm, and felt my chest tighten. "Do you have more?" I asked. She sighed. "Every case is similar. Names, dates, places. You're lucky you found out now." I asked, "And what should I do with this?" Julia looked at me. "Send it to HR. Show them everything. Let them investigate. He won't escape this time." My hands trembled. I can't believe she didn't see it sooner. She said, "Most of them don't. He's a master manipulator." We sent the evidence to Oliver that afternoon. I typed, "We need a full investigation. This is serious." Julia added her notes. When I hit send, I whispered, "Please let this stop him." Oliver replied almost immediately, scheduling a meeting. "Ethan, HR will take it from here. Thank you for coming forward." I muttered, "I just want justice, not revenge." The next few days were a blur. Rumors began spreading. People whispered about Marcus in hushed tones. I overheard colleagues talking about internal complaints and how HR was looking into his behavior. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief that he couldn't manipulate anyone else, and anger at myself for ever trusting him. Julia called me once and said, "He's losing his perfect image fast. You did the right thing." I whispered, "I hope she sees it too." Lisa finally came back to the house that night. Her face was pale. She said, "I need to talk." I leaned against the counter. "Now." She nodded, tears in her eyes. I made a mistake." I said nothing. She asked, "Can you forgive me?" I swallowed and whispered, "I don't know if I can. I'm numb." She stepped closer. "I never meant to hurt you." I muttered, "Then why?" She cried, I thought I needed him." I shook my head. "You thought wrong. You destroyed us." The way she looked at me, pleading, made me want to feel something. I said, "For the first time, I see you for what you are. Not my wife. A stranger who broke me." She staggered back. "Ethan," I whispered, "don't. Just go." She whispered, "I'll never forget you." And I said, "Goodbye, Lisa." After she left, Grace called. "Ethan, are you okay?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Come over. We'll talk." I muttered, "I can't pretend anymore." She said, "You don't have to. That's why I'm here." I agreed. Later, Mia called too. "I heard what happened." "You're not alone," she said. I whispered, "I feel like I'm falling apart." She said, "Then let us catch you." I spent the evening with Grace and Mia, and for the first time, I laughed softly. Just a little, but it reminded me of hope. I whispered, "Maybe I can survive this." Grace said, "You don't need her to survive." I nodded. I thought I couldn't, but maybe I can. The next morning, I woke up and stared at the empty side of the bed. My chest hurt, but I whispered, "I'm free." Julia texted me, "He can't hurt anyone else. Thank you for trusting me." I typed back, "I couldn't have done it without you." I stared out the window and muttered, "Lisa's gone. But I'm still here." I realized something crucial. I could rebuild without her. I could trust again, maybe slower, maybe wiser. I whispered, "I don't need her anymore." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The darkness was still there, but for the first time in weeks, I could see light at the end. Julia, Grace, Mia, they had given me the clarity I couldn't find on my own. I took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm healing." Slowly, but I'm healing. My phone buzzed with another message from Julia, but I ignored it. I didn't need to see Marcus's world unravel. I only needed to see my own life start again. I stood up, stretched, and muttered, I'll be okay. I finally believe it. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was Ben. Dude, you need to see this, he said before I even said hello. I rubbed my eyes. What? He laughed, a little cruelly. Marcus is gone. Fired. Everything you sent HR did the trick. It's all over the office. I whispered, already. He said, overnight. People are talking. Lisa is sweating bullets too. My stomach twisted. Good. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. For the first time, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Later, Lisa showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She just opened it and stepped inside, her eyes red and swollen. I said nothing. She said, Ethan, please, can we talk? I let her sit on the couch. She ran her hands over her face and whispered, I destroyed everything. I know I didn't deserve you. I cut her off gently. Lisa, I heard about Marcus. I saw what happened. She gasped. I didn't think it would end like this. I leaned back and said, do you understand now? Her voice trembled. I know I made a mistake. I can't explain why I did it. I was selfish and I nodded slowly. You broke me. She cried harder. I know. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to hurt you. I put my hand up. Stop. She looked up, desperate. Stop what? I said stop begging. I'm not the same man anymore. I can't go back to someone who threw me away so easily. She covered her mouth and whispered, Ethan, please. I shook my head. No, I won't be pulled back into this. She slumped back on the couch, silent. After a moment, she said, I thought we could fix it if I apologized. I said, some things can't be fixed. Some things break you in ways you can't ignore. She whispered, I can't believe I lost you like this. I muttered, you didn't lose me. You left me. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know. I didn't see it clearly until now. I felt a strange peace. And now you do. She tried to reach for me, but I stood. Ethan, please, she begged again. I said, I won't be your safety net anymore. You made your choice. Live with it. She collapsed back, silent, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. I stepped outside and took a deep breath. The air was sharp and clean. I whispered, I can finally see my own worth. My phone buzzed. It was Grace. Hey, I heard what happened. You okay? I said, I'm okay. I think I can breathe again. She laughed softly. Good. You need a fresh start. Come join us for a hike tomorrow. Group small, just some friends. I hesitated. I don't know if I can. She said, then try. You need to move forward. I looked up at the sky. All right, I'll come. The next day, I drove to meet Grace and the others. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my chest still heavy, but lighter than before. I whispered, I can do this. The sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could exhale. When I arrived, Grace waved me over. Glad you're here, she said. I smiled faintly. Me too. As we walked along the trail, I kept thinking about the chaos of the past few weeks. Marcus's reputation in ruins, Lisa facing her own fallout, gossip buzzing like angry bees around the office. I whispered, justice has a strange way of arriving. Grace glanced at me. You survived it. That's what matters. I nodded. I did, and I can finally start living for me. Mia joined a few steps behind, carrying a small backpack. You're quiet today, she said, smiling. I replied, I'm just thinking. It's strange, but I feel calm. She said, good. That means healing is happening. I whispered, it's happening slowly but surely. The trail stretched ahead, sun-dappled and inviting. I felt the ground steady beneath my feet for the first time in months. I remember the nights alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Now, walking with Grace and Mia, laughing quietly at small jokes, I felt pieces of myself return. I whispered, pain is still there, but it doesn't control me. Grace said, exactly. You're reclaiming your life. I nodded. I see that now. I finally see that my worth isn't tied to someone who abandoned me. At the top of the hill, I stopped and looked at the city below. The wind blew through my hair, and I whispered, this is mine, my life, my peace. Grace stood next to me, smiling. You earned it, Ethan. I felt my chest expand with a light I hadn't known for months. Thank you. I said quietly. I could feel hope returning, steady and calm, like a river filling a long, dry riverbed. On the drive home later, I kept glancing at the horizon. The sky was golden, streaked with orange and pink. I whispered, "I'm ready for a new chapter." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Julia, but this time I didn't open it. I didn't need reminders of what had broken me. I only needed the road ahead. I smiled faintly and muttered, "I'll be okay." I finally believe it. For the first time in months, I felt both pain and peace, and with it a strange, steady hope.